brothers and sisters of the multiverse. Today I want to do something else. In one of my previous videos on conditional happiness, I'll link it here, I talked about what people often call happiness. Today I wanted to add a positive note to that, on what happiness is. That just couldn't define it. And I believe many people have different definitions of it. When some people say happiness, they mean that a hormone kicks in their brains. Some mean contentment. Some mean when those conditions are fulfilled, right? It's easier to say what it isn't than what it is. So I done what most of those motivational videos and guys do, and ask an AI. I can read it to you. What others do with the teleprompter, as if you don't see when the eyes move, if they even show their face. And don't make faceless videos. Check this out. What true happiness is. In the last video, I spoke about conditioned happiness, the kind that depends on external permission, on rules, careers, possessions, and approval. Today I want to talk about something else, something quieter, something that cannot be bought or controlled, something that remains when everything else is gone. Today I want to talk about true happiness. You recognize the speech, right? True happiness is not something you achieve. It's something you remember. Okay? You don't chase it, you return to it. It's been here all along, beneath the noise, beneath the striving, beneath the story of who you thought you had to become. It's the calm after you stop pretending. The peace that appears when you stop fighting what is. Radical acceptance, stoicism. True happiness doesn't need a reason. It's not a product of success. It's the natural vibration of a being who is no longer divided inside. When you breathe and feel the miracle that you're even here, that's it. That's happiness. That's life remembering itself through you. You see, conditional happiness depends on permission, but true happiness depends on presence. Oh, that word is everywhere nowadays. You can have everything else and still feel hollow. Or you can sit under a tree watches sunlight move through the leaves and feel like the richest soul in the universe. Okay, that's true. Because in that moment, you're not missing anything. You're home. Even science these days begin to whisper what mystics have known all along. That when we live in gratitude, when we open our hearts, our very selves begin to sing a different song. Okay, that's true, it's about epigenetics. I researched and it explained it to me. And it's really fascinating. I'll make a video about that too. New genes awaken. Actually, it's about those so-called once called junk DNA, right? Now they changed that. Okay, I'll explain it in the next video. Old patterns dissolve. Our biology listens to our soul. And when the soul remembers the joy, the body heals. True. True happiness isn't loud. It hums quietly through you. It's when your breath feels like belonging. Okay, whatever. When you stop trying to become something and start remembering that you already are something infinite. Also true. Partly, at least. It's when you realize that the same force that spins galaxies also beats your heart. Well, that's also true. Then joy is no longer an emotion, it becomes a recognition. And when two people meet in that recognition, without masks, without pretending, happiness multiplies. Well, let me pause here. That's even true meeting. It's nothing but the first true meeting of someone when both people are without masks. And that's so rare you wouldn't believe. And some masks are so, well, let's say, skin tight that you don't even see that it is a mask. Even if it's so thin, it seems transparent, as if it isn't there. But still, can't know someone until you see them in action in extraordinary circumstances. In, let's say, there's a fire in the house. Will they rush to the exit first and shove everyone aside? Or will they remain last and help people get out? You know, that kind of stuff. So in everyday life, you can't really know. Anyway, this meeting someone without a mask, and you're both without masks, that is something truly special. but I wouldn't necessarily connect it with happiness. It's just how it should be all the time. That would be the normal baseline. Or the baseline for normality. Happiness is a big word and much above that. Anyway, okay, I'll read further. Okay, so I'll repeat. And when two people meet in that recognition without mask, without pretending, happiness multiplies. Not because they complete each other, but because they mirror the same freedom. Freedom? Freedom to be you? It seems to contradict itself. So if you have to ask for permission to be you without a mask, that still applies to the conditional happiness. That's why a real connection feels sacred, because it is. Oh yeah, it is. So how do we live this practically? Not by trying harder, but by listening deeper. Oh. it's so, you just know who made this. You hear it everywhere. This kind of BS. Really? What does it even mean? Not by trying harder, but by listening deeper. It's not listening. If it's not listening in the deepest sense, then you can't call it listening. So what is listening deeper? And not by trying harder. It has to be tried harder to listen deeper. Come on. Doesn't make sense, okay. I'll read further. Sit in silence for a few minutes each day. It's not to meditate or achieve something, but to remember who is behind your eyes. Now that doesn't sound creepy at all, right? Create something beautiful, not to sell it, but to let life express itself through you. Is that for an 80-year-old? Be grateful, not for something, but as something, as life itself. Excuse me. It's ridiculous. Really? Oh my god. AI tries to be poetic. It's so funny. What the hell does that mean? Be grateful, not for something, but as something. As life itself. Okay, if you bring into that wonder that I mentioned in that previous video, conditional happiness, it is a wonder. But we are not. We are, and yet we are not life itself. We are part of life and alive, but not life. It's like saying the car is the road or something. Anyway, I'll read further. That's not spirituality, that's sanity. Unneeded Picard. It's not spirituality, that's sanity. So spirituality is not sanity? That's your logic? Or is it my logic? Maybe my logic is flawed. It's so stupid. That's not spirituality, that's sanity. Does it want to say that sanity is about spirituality? Or I don't know. But it sounds good, right? I mentioned that too. It sounds so good in those speeches. It doesn't make any sense. You can imply or extrapolate or deduct or whatever stuff you want in that. Okay, I'll read for that. We spend so much time running after comfort, but real comfort begins when the chase ends. Okay, that's just Stoicism. Or also Buddhism or Taoism, something like that. That's the philosophy of if the attachment, you can want something but you're not attached to the outcome of getting it. That's not comfort. That's you could even say psychological defense mechanism, right? Spiritual bypassing and all that. That's the thing. People so fall for that and don't even realize it. It also depends on what is it that you want and what isn't what you truly want. Are we talking about means to an end or the end itself? Or just, is it the mean to the end, to the compensation of something you think you'll never get? You know? It's just too simplistic. Okay. Let's move on. So, you spend so much time running after comfort, but real comfort begins when the chase ends. When you're finally okay with just being. except if you're in constant pain because of some illness. Be real comfortable with that just being. Really. I mean, you see what I mean? All these nuances. If it isn't true for everyone, it's not the highest truth. Or if it's not true all the time. You know what I mean? And joy no longer depends on circumstances, but arises from understanding. Now he's talking about joy. Joy is something different than happiness. Joy is more like this chemically driven, hormone driven. Dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin, whatever. The feeling of joy. That's what it does. But happiness is something else. And then it says, I exist. And that alone is a miracle. And that is, again, very true. The chances are mathematical, almost impossibilities, but highly improbable. When enough of us live that way, we won't need leaders to tell us how to behave. We won't need laws to keep us kind. Because harmony will arise naturally. Like music, when all instruments finally tune to the same note, frequency. Well, yes, when we remember ourselves, at least those 95% of us or so who are not the dark tetratypes. Yes, that's our true nature. Peace and harmony. When we un-F ourselves with all the dogmas and indoctrinations and cultural and social norms of correct type of thinking and certain attributions to values and the other way around, right? I mean our true selves. However, born before the world told us how we should think or feel or behave, or that is kind naturally. That is unburdened. That is naturally seeking harmony and peace. And then it says, because I mentioned the soul singing in the last one. True happiness is when the soul starts singing again. Not for applause, not for reward, but just because it feels like it. Well, I won't bullshit shoot you with that. Because to be honest, I wouldn't know how to define it. There is some truth in that, but there is also much bullshit and generalizations, you know. How would you define it? We could define contentment and joy and all of that fun stuff, but happiness itself? I honestly wouldn't know. Maybe it's just me. I don't think so. It's a very tricky one, right? There are those moments when in the middle of some event, or I don't know, we are with friends, for example, and we eat and drink and joke and laugh and the moment when you kind of pause the time in your head and just watch yourself, not thinking about any problems or issues or yesterday or tomorrow, and just being in the moment and enjoying life. It's beautiful, right? We could say that's a moment of happiness. Is true happiness just in those moments? Or is there a form of happiness that is constant and that is not contentment or something else? Some philosophers say, like, joy is the absence of sadness or something. Health is the absence of illness. How do we do that with happiness? A longer span of contentment? And trying to keep that alive. That wouldn't be unconditional then. But it also wouldn't be a bright note to say that there is no such thing as unconditional happiness on this planet. It would be dark, right? I'm not sure. Euphoria is another thing. It's also temporary. Here, I had an NDE, and I believe to have experienced a place of permanent euphoria, so to say. But that's not possible here. So what is happiness? Should we just accept those definitions of how most people use it and close the book on that? Especially for empaths. It's even more complicated. If there are 10 people in the room and 9 are happy and 1 is sad, it's like the empath can't be happy with the other 9, right? And just ignore the sad one. And what does this mean if one has empathy for this whole humanity? It seems like not possible, except under the condition that you ignore all the pain and suffering, right? They never tell you that in that way. They always rephrase it. It's not your responsibility. But look, if you, let's say, buy a certain brand of a t-shirt from which you could have known that it's sewed together by forced labor at the other end of the world, even by children who are forced to do this under horrible conditions, your ignorance is directly supporting that misery, pain and suffering, those children on the other end of the world. It would have taken you just a minute of searching on the internet what's happening and inform yourself. And those so wise tell it's not our burden to carry whole world on our shoulders. No, just keep the status quo, right? Let them suffer. Enjoy your life. Just forget about it. Just don't think about it. Just don't research it. That's their best advice. Only so you can be happy. And if you do, that makes them right and makes them feel better about themselves. What a perfect little circle. Just ignore it. Just keep on doing what you're doing. Just keep on supporting that brand. Right? And that's why the world is how it is. Good job. Right? It's not egocentric at all. Ever thinking about this? Have you ever thought about this? How some little phrases, some unthought through phrases become slogans in self-empowerment or something. Or it's not just brands of clothes, it's everywhere. How many of those even additives in food and artificial flavors, companies use them, externalize the production of those, and it's then not their responsibility, right? To use their services and products, and they're just ignoring that those companies pollute somewhere waters, nature, and people get sick somewhere, and that's not their problem, right? They're directly contributing to that. Where's the responsibility? Just ignore it and be happy, right? What a mature, responsible human being you are. Right? It's in our hands, the masses, the consumers, to inform ourselves what we support with what we buy. Anyway, I drifted away again, sorry. But if you have a definition of happiness, I'd love to hear it. That is not conditional on this planet. Thank you in advance for that. Love you, brothers and sisters.